Hi, my name is Stacy, and this is my daughter Sonia. About a year ago, she came to me and told me that she was not able to hear, and I assumed because she had just been to the pool that maybe she just got some water in her ear and that she would be fine. But unfortunately, after a few days of complaining, she still said she couldn't hear. So I set up an appointment for her to go see an audiologist and just make sure that everything was okay. I remember that they did test after test after test. The look in the doctor's face, um, as a parent, I knew something was not right. They came, sat down with me, and prepared me that we were going to have a life-changing event in our home. Um, they told me that my daughter Sonia had lost hearing in the right ear and that her left side was being affected. That she was going to need some support to be able to hear and communicate with us. One thing that they suggest was a hearing aid, and these are some of the ones that are on the market today. They're making them a little more smaller now, so that way they're not very noticeable. For children's, it's amazing. They got different colors. Um, Another thing was learning a form of communication. So we had to learn how to do sign language. So we are in the process of learning now. We're learning the first one and meal times. Right now is a crucial time for her to learn because children tend to learn faster than adults. So as a family, we decided that we were going to go ahead and learn all together to better her situation and ours. Um, as time has passed, she has done really well with sign language. She's caught on so fast and she can educate us more and more. Um, but last year, Sonia got to go to kindergarten. It was very exciting for us, especially because she's our first kiddo that um, we get to see grow fast and into a very smart young lady. Um, but one thing that I did notice, my daughter was placed on an IEP plan. Um, what they do is they set goals to where Sonia needs help academically. So these are some of them. Um, This is a federal contract, so it helps the school better assist the children such as Sonia or children that just have learning disability. Um, she had that, and they would keep me, informed of anything that would go wrong or they need to adjust or anything. They would have to go through me because being that it is a contract with federal, they had to get parents' consent. So we were always involved in her education during kindergarten. The last few weeks of school, we had a meeting about what was best for Sonia. Sonia right now is out of a school district because the Idaho Deaf and Blind School is in that school, and they're teaching my daughter how to sign and they're teaching her how to adjust to the environment in a classroom setting. And they would teach her stuff that you and I would find easy to learn may not be easy for them to learn because they're only getting about 50% of what's being said to them. Sonia was in a general population, such as a main classroom with peers that were deaf and peers that were not. She would learn, lessons in the morning, but in the day she would go in with peers that are deaf like her and relearn all that material because as a deaf person, you don't process the information more clear as a hearing person would. So they would do that in the afternoon and teach her more sign language and teach her how to advocate for herself when she can't be able to understand something. How do you ask for help? So we did that, but as the year was coming to an end, we had to go back in and kind of revise her IEP plan to see how it would help her with first grade. That being said, we had hit a bump because Sonia was at a district. Nampa School District decided that they could go ahead and teach my daughter. I was not very happy with that situation because one, our school district is not prepared to teach children like my daughter. My daughter does not only have deafness, but she also has cerebral palsy, which affects the nerves and how the body receives messages and how the body functions. Um, that wasn't including that wasn't included in her IEP plan with the cerebral palsy, just the deafness. So NAMPA thought that they could go ahead and step in and transfer her back to her district so she can learn with peers that are hearing. And I had an issue with that just because my daughter has yet to fully experience the process of adjusting to being deaf now. As I said, our school system is not prepared to teach children that are deaf. The deaf community is growing, and children are a part of that community. Preparing children is preparing them for life. We need to make sure that we have the proper books, the proper teachers, the proper education system, and resources. That way, children are not falling through the cracks or children are not falling behind academically. A little bit about how American Sign Language became part of the U.S. It wasn't actually recognized until 1914 when a minister by the name of Dr. Thomas Hopkins was very interested. He had a neighbor that his daughter was disabled. She could not hear and she was not verbal. One thing about Sonia is she is verbal. She may not be able to hear all the way, but she is verbal. She can speak. With this little girl, she was not able to, but she was very smart. Just people could not communicate with her. So after gaining the support of the community and gaining some money, he went and took a trip to Europe where sign language is very common there. There was only about maybe 1,000 or so in America, so it wasn't very common thing to learn. But he traveled to Europe. He met some really great people that were part of the National Institute of the Deaf and the Mute. He studied their methods. A year later, he came back in 1817 and opened the first school in Hartford, Connecticut. By 1863, there is now 22 deaf schools in the U.S., and it continues to grow. A lot of the confusion that ended up happening and why sign language was not very popular or it was frowned upon was because a lot of the times people don't understand it. The hearing community doesn't understand the deaf community, and there was a lot of misinformed information. Most would think that it was a disease. Some would even say that it was an act of God because maybe the parents did something against God and now they were punished because now they have a child that is disabled or has an illness, and that's not the case. With Sonia, they didn't know why she lost hearing, just that she did. They live in a silent world, and that doesn't mean that they're not people. That does not mean that they don't live like you or I would live. A lot of them actually have very high paying jobs. A lot of them live functionally. A lot of them are educators themselves. The one thing that's lacking in our system is that we don't have a school that's here in the Treasure Valley. We have a school in Gooding, Idaho, but those are usually for older kids that are getting ready to learn and transition out into the community. A school for my daughter, which, she's only 6, I would like to have something locally, and that way she can be around peers. Peers tend to learn from each other, and it would be nice to have her learn from her peers and continue to express her needs and her concerns and be able to express sign language. The one thing that I saw in Nampa School District is that they didn't have children with deafness like Sonia. All her peers were hearing, and so she would kind of shy away from using sign language or asking for help because she felt that people were judging her. And majority of the time, a lot of the times that I did talk to the community, that's how they felt, is that the hearing will judge them or look down on them, and that should not be. Um, Especially because both the hearing and the deaf people have to learn to accept differences in each other so we can live together. Um, Our current country has the third ranking in the US for the most common issues, which is deafness. In the US, 2 to 3 of every 1,000 children are born deaf or hard hearing. Studies have shown that it does have enormous effect on speech and some developmental delays. Many children have a hard time socializing, have a hard time functioning in school. They lose interest quite a bit because they're not processing or getting a lot of the information. Um, American Sign Language um, associates have indicated an average of children with mild to moderate hear loss is not receiving the intervention services. So 1 to 4 grade levels are lower than students that hear, which means that they're not getting the services in school. So the question is, how are you going to teach a child if you're not prepared? Um, the biggest reason deaf and hard hearing people have is a lack of understanding. Teachers are not aware of things to look for, such as their behaviors, if they're falling behind in school, are they getting all the information? Because a teacher walks around a lot in the classroom, they are not face to face with the child that is required for deafness. So a lot of the times the children are not getting the information that is needed to complete the lesson. They usually have to require a translator or a note taker to make sure that they're taking notes, because without it, they would miss a lot. Some kids, such as my daughter, has the FM system. These have mics in them that are connected to their hearing aid, so the teacher wears it around the neck and it amplifies her voice, so that way the child can actually hear the teacher, but it also amplifies the room. Children are being noisy, it amplifies that, and so my daughter's getting a lot of noise on top of the teacher talking. Sometimes they can be troublesome because the teachers forget to turn them off, and so children are hearing conversations that they should not be hearing, which happens. It happened a couple times this year. But also, there sometimes equipment functions happen. My daughter this year, hers would not hold the charge, so she could not get all the full information. When they tested her, she was not doing so good in her academics, just because with her hearing aid, she was only able to hear about 20%. And so we have to have a system that is prepared to teach them, because if their equipment fails or if a child is struggling, what's in place to help them? They do not have, they have special ed teachers that are in the schools, but a lot of those times, and I commend those teachers because it takes a lot of patience to deal with children that are disabled and to assist and educate them. So I commend them, except that a lot of the times the special ed teachers are not educated enough to deal with children that are deaf. They don't specialize in deafness. And so you need a teacher of the deaf to teach children. And that's where we loved the program in kindergarten, but the only thing bad about it is that it doesn't progress after kindergarten. So children are out there and they're depending on interpreters, or they're depending on whatever little resources they do have, which is most of the time just the teacher has to spend a little bit more one-on-one time, which is not bad. But being in a classroom of 20, 30 kids, you can't always do that for everybody. You have to give a more extent time for testing. You have to be prepared for behavioral issues that will come, because the majority of the time children with learning with hard hearing and deafness do act out because they don't feel like they are getting the information, and so teachers are thinking they have a behavioral problem, which that's not the case. It's just that they can't relate to the hearing peers that they have, so they act out a little bit. um, um, there has to be a design program to make sure that children are going to succeed. And right now, we are in the process of writing our congressperson, just because it's very crucial that we have a school here for children that are very young, that can learn, that we have the resources for the community as our community is growing. You know, we're seeing a lot of change in diversities and disabilities. We're seeing a lot of things. So as that grows, our education system has to grow too. Making sure that we have the proper information, make sure that we have the proper resources. There is meetings out there, there's sponsored groups out there for parents and families. There is so much out there. It's just making sure that it's available. Um, this year, you know, that we were blessed that our insurance paid for Sonia's hearing aid, because they have to be changed so often. So we were blessed with that. Other than that, we would be paying out of pocket. It can get costly. I think one hearing aid can cost you about $2,000. Just the FM pin is about another $1,000. So it can get kind of expensive. But if there's programs out there, there's an education system out there that's preparing them for, whatever comes their way, it'd be a blessing. At this point, there isn't one, and I continue to fight with the school district just because of the fact that my daughter is very unique. She never has played by the rules when it comes to her health, and I want her to be successful. I'm a parent that is very educated and has been in the healthcare system for a very long time, so I can see what it does to children that fall through the cracks. So I would like to thank you for listening, and if by chance you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask or reach out. But thank you.